The badge reader beeped like it was bored with me. I pressed my hip against the turnstile anyway, habit, and stepped into that cold, hospital air that always smelled like lemon floor cleaner, coffee grounds, and something that wanted to be clean but never quite made it. Second shift at Greenville Memorial had a hum to it, like the building itself inhaled at 2 o'clock and held breath until midnight. I loved that hum. It made me feel like part of the lungs of this place. We were the breath between day and night. That was my little private joke. "Evening, Talia," said the older security guard with the crossword. He always filled in random boxes in pencil and didn't bother erasing his mistakes. "Your team's already up on 2. "I know where they hide," I said, flashing him a grin. "You ever gonna finish that thing?" "Not if they keep adding new words," he said, and I kept moving. I always walked fast the first 5 minutes of a shift. It was my ritual. Burn off whatever nonsense the day tried to leave on me. Fluorescence buzzed overhead. The elevator ding stuck to my ears like gum. Down the hall, a CNA pushed a rolling cart rattling with plastic cups and pink mouth swabs that always smelled like bubblegum and antiseptic had a baby together. She wore a headband that said Wednesday in glitter letters, like she was personally trying to charm the calendar into behaving. The respiratory office was a rectangle with a mismatched couch that had been new sometime around the first iPhone. A whiteboard listed floors and assignments. The dry erase markers all looked the exact same shade of dying. A box of old neb masks sat on top of the fridge like a shrine. There was always a stack of stale donuts in a clear lid container, glazed, chalky, and visually loud, plus a scattering of empty coffee pods like spent cartridges. I signed the clipboard, wrote the time, and let the pen squeak a little extra because it annoyed the day shift lead, this guy named Ron who pretended not to hear. He was stuffing his backpack like it had called him a name, dropping in his lunchbox, his spare scrubs, his binder with laminated protocols he never read. "You're on 5C and 4 South again," he said without looking up. "Love that for me," I said. He sniffed. "Don't forget neuro ICU for the 6 o'clock. "Wouldn't dream of it." He finally glanced over. "Gretchen's on tonight." "Of course she is," I said, real mild. Too mild, probably. "Ooh, she's so irritating," I thought. Ron shrugged in a way that said, "I don't want to be in your drama, but I will watch it from the doorway. I like a free show." Then he zipped his bag, slung it over one shoulder, and ghosted us with the quickness. I looked at the whiteboard. 5C, 4 South, Neuro ICU float. My name in black, Gretchen's in purple with a little star she put by herself. That star irritated me more than it should have, which is how I knew I was already carrying a low-grade resentment like a fever. Second shift wasn't supposed to feel like that. Second shift was supposed to be quiet hallways, steady rounds, a rhythm of doors opening and closing and patients' breath changing from ragged to smooth under my hands. I took my treatment list from the printer, the thing wheezed out pages like a smoker, and sat at the desk to line up my evening. Who needed duonebs at 4 and 8? Who had a CPT order? Who did best with Meprogen before we started percussion? Who liked jokes and who liked me to shut up and just do the job? Most of the time I talked, but not to hear myself, just to keep patients calm while I counted breaths and watched the chest rise. If you watch a chest long enough, you start to feel like a metronome for a stranger's whole life. From the hall, I could hear Gretchen before I saw her. Her laugh sounded like dry leaves, nice if you were outside in a park, weird under a drop ceiling. She came in with her lunch. Bag, a little bumblebee thing with stripes, and a ponytail so tight it made her eyebrows look concerned. "Hey," she sang to no one and everyone. "Happy Wednesday?" "Happy Wednesday," I echoed, not looking up. She set the bag down, opened the fridge, frowned at the contents like someone had failed her personally by leaving a yogurt, then put her bag in and closed the door with a soft little push. She stood beside me, not touching, but close enough for the temperature to change. "You're on 5C?" she asked. I nodded at the whiteboard. "Mm-hmm. So am I." I looked at the whiteboard again. She was on 3 East and ICU float. She knew how to read. I decided not to open my mouth. "I'll probably float up to 5 later," she said, picking at the corner of the board with her thumb like maybe the assignments would peel off. "Makes sense," I said. It didn't, but whatever. I had people to help breathe. I grabbed my neb kit, stacked my treatment slips, and slid the pen behind my ear. The hospital gave us pens that never wrote on first contact, so I'd already took the good one out of materials and stuck it in my scrub pocket. I had my little bottle of hand lotion, unscented because patients complain about lavender like it's a hate crime, and a roll of tape. The tape was always disappearing. I kept mine wrapped around my stethoscope like a snake. When I hit the hallway, it hit back with that hospital quiet that isn't actually quiet at all. Beeps from monitors that don't mean what people think they mean. An ice machine groaning somewhere. The bare feet slap of an active patient dragging a gown behind him like a tail, and nurses moving fast while pretending they weren't moving fast. That was the art. 5C had tan walls that wanted to be warm, but the light was too blue. So it just looked like a budget hotel where the towels argued with the carpet. Room 513 was a gentleman with COPD who always called me baby girl and tipped me with peppermints he wasn't supposed to have. 515 was an asthmatic teenager who rolled her eyes like she practiced in the mirror. 517 had a post-op with a chest tube and a wife who watched every breath like it owed her rent. I said good evening to the unit clerk and she said, "Don't let that boy in 515 con you into an extra Jell-O." And I said, "He only gets one if he does 10 good huffs." And she laughed like I'd already lost. The first room was 513. Mr. Peppermint. He had the kind of white mustache that looked like it remembered every cigarette it ever met. He smiled when I walked in and lifted the sheet like he was a celebrity revealing his own leg. "Afternoon, baby girl," he rasped. "Or is it evening?" "I can't tell in here." "It's the glamorous hour where day and night make a deal," I said, snapping on gloves. "How you breathing?" "Like a fish on a porch." "I can fix the porch," I said. "Mouthpiece or mask?" "Mask," he said, and then, "But not the one that smells like somebody's curl activator." "I got you," I said, pulling a fresh one. "I'll hook you up with the scentless special." He chuckled without sound, just shoulders moving. I checked his sats. 88 resting, okay, but not my favorite. Listened to his chest, which crackled like tissue paper near the bases. "We'll do the neb. Then I want to see you blow out that spirometer like you're putting out candles you don't even like." He made a face, but he took the treatment. I hung the neb, watched the mist drift like somebody's breath you could see. He settled into it, eyes half closed. This was the part I liked, the part that felt like knitting air. Me, the machine, the medicine, and the tiny ways the chest changed shape from minute 1 to minute 8. The rise got less stubborn. The shoulders quit bracing. His sats ticked up to 92. You can't tell me that isn't a kind of magic. When we finished, I wiped down the setup and told him to show me his spirometer numbers. He pretended to hate it and then blew like a birthday boy with a grudge. Not bad. "You do that 10 times an hour while you're awake," I said, pointing at him the way nurses point when they're half mom, half coach. "And don't cheat me." "I'll know." "You always know," he said, and I grinned because it was true. I charted outside his room, back against the wall, scrolling through the EMR on the WOW cart, the workstation on wheels, whose wheels only worked if you begged. The software lagged for a second, took a deep breath, then caught up. I documented the NEB, the assessment, the spirometer numbers, my plan to reevaluate in 4 hours. It was straightforward, the kind of thing I could do half asleep, except I didn't. I did it clean. It mattered to me that my charting could walk into a meeting without flinching. I moved to 515. The teenager with the eye rolls wasn't in bed. He was flexing with his phone camera like he was auditioning for a bicep commercial. His mother sat by the window with a social worker flyer folded into her hands. "You're late," the boy said. "I'm on time," I said. Your lungs, however, are behind schedule." He snorted, then had a little cough that veered too hard for the end of the lane, and he went pink. I reached for the neb kit and kept my voice sugar low. "We'll get you smoothed out." While the medicine ran, I had him practice pursed lip breathing. He acted like I'd asked him to write an essay, but he did it. By minute 5, his shoulders dropped. That wall inside his chest let out a little door. I made a game of it. "If your sats hit 95, I will personally smuggle you a Jell-O." "Red," he said. "Red is hospital wine," I said. "I can live with that." His mother smiled into her paper crane. I showed her how to watch his breaths without turning it into a stare. She said, "Thank you," in a voice that had been holding on to that word for a while. Back in the hall, a housekeeping cart squealed like it needed a hug. I washed my hands for the 20th time, even though it was still early. Dry skin split by November. I hit lotion. I made notes to circle back at 8. I moved through the next room and the next, building steam, slipping into the second shift groove where the hallway makes more sense than a living room, where the beeps translate in your head and the faces do, too. Some people get drunk on nightlife. I got a little drunk on competence. Halfway down the corridor, a voice followed me like a draft. "Talia?" I didn't turn. I had 517 in my sights. The post-op with the chest tube and the wife who counted breaths like coins. "Talia, quick question?" I closed my eyes just 1 second, the way you do when you know the traffic light's about to switch and you hate the color. Then I opened them and turned around. Gretchen had both hands on her chart like it was a hymnal. Her ponytail sat high enough to make me wonder if she could feel the air behind her ears. She smiled with all her teeth, but the corners of her mouth stayed tense, like the smile was wearing tight shoes. "Quick question about your charting," she started, the phrase already rubbing me wrong. I balanced my clipboard against the wall and glanced down the hall where my next patient's door was cracked an inch. "What about it?" Gretchen took a half step closer, smelling faintly like coconut hand sanitizer and fresh anxiety. "It's just, I noticed you log your neb treatments under PRN complete instead of continuous. Isn't that for nebulizers that run continuously?" "Yeah," I finished. "Because this isn't that. PRN means completed, like the treatment's done. The patient's done breathing. They lived. Success story." She gave me that tight, polite laugh people do when they're trying not to sound corrected. Right, of course, it's just Ron mentioned that sometimes it's easier to track them under continuous. "Ron doesn't even use the EMR half the time," I said. "He writes his vitals on napkins and lets somebody else enter them." Gretchen blinked. "Oh, I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," I said. "It's fine." I started toward 517 again, but she followed, heels clicking quick behind me. "It's just that for consistency, we should all—" "Gretchen," I said, stopping so fast she nearly walked into me. "Are you auditing me or shadowing me?" Her face did a little flicker. "Neither. I'm just trying to help." "Help what?" "You, I guess." That's when I laughed. Not the polite kind, but the short, sharp bark that slips out before you can file it under professional. "You think I need help giving breathing treatments?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Her hands came up like she was holding invisible evidence. "Look, I know you've been on 5C a lot lately, and I thought, maybe you're getting overloaded. I'm just trying to—" "To what? Show me how to do my job?" Her voice dropped a little. "You don't have to get defensive." I felt the heat rise in my neck. "You've been following me into rooms for a week, Gretchen. Watching me chart, watching me set up nebs, like I'm your lab rat. I got a problem with that. I was assigned to float—" "You were assigned to mind your floors," I said, cutting her off. "So, why are you here?" Something in her face pinched. "Because someone needs to keep an eye on protocol. You're fast, but sometimes fast means sloppy. That one hit. It wasn't true, but it hit because she said it like she'd been saving it. I stepped closer, and she took a step back, bumping into the linen cart. "Say that again?" I asked, low. She swallowed. "I didn't mean—" "No, go ahead," I said, voice steady. "Say I'm sloppy." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her tongue pressed against her cheek like she was holding words hostage. "That's what I thought," I said, turning away. I could feel the blood in my ears. I wanted to walk off, but she said something soft, just enough to make me stop again. "I'm just trying to help you not get written up again." I turned around slow. "Written up for what?" Her eyes widened like she'd realized she'd stepped too far. "Nothing, forget it." "No, don't forget it me," I said. "What did you mean?" "I heard from Miss Hunt that she's been watching." And that was it. That's where my patience clocked out early. "Gretchen," I said, stepping in until there were 6 inches of air between us. "I don't know what kind of little games you're playing, but let me say this real clear. You are not my boss, you are not my supervisor, and you sure as hell are not my babysitter. So stop following me around before I—" She flinched before I even finished. "Before you what?" I could hear the beeping of the monitor in 517 getting louder behind me. That high, nervous pitch that makes you feel like someone's watching. I should have stopped there. Should have laughed it off, turned it into a joke. But my anger had already gotten behind the wheel. "Before I kick your ass," I said, quiet but sharp enough to cut. "That's what." For a second, we just stood there. 2 grown women in scrubs under flickering fluorescent lights, surrounded by IV pumps and hand sanitizer dispensers, pretending we were still professionals. Then Gretchen's eyes did that wet glass thing, and she turned on her heel and walked fast down the hall. I watched her go, heart pounding like I'd just run a sprint. The charge nurse looked up from the desk, eyebrows lifted halfway to heaven. "You good?" she asked. "Peachy," I said, but my voice had that hollow echo that meant the adrenaline was still in charge. I finished 517's treatment like nothing happened, charted cleaner than ever, double-checked every dose, every timestamp. But I could feel eyes on me all night. Gretchen didn't come back to 5C. She stayed out of sight, but I caught whispers in the break room, small clusters of voices that went quiet when I walked in. By the time I clocked out at 11:45, my hands were steady, but my stomach wasn't. I tried to tell myself it was over, that maybe she'd calm down and keep it between us. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't over. People like Gretchen don't let things die.